अर्लियर इनफैक्ट टिल रिसेंटली जब किसी देश का नेता किसी दूसरे देश जाता था, भारत के प्रधानमंत्री यूएई और कुछ देशों के टूर पे हैं, या प्रेसिडेंट ट्रंप चाइना गए हैं, तो क्वेश्चन सिर्फ इकोनॉमिक होते थे, कॉर्पोरेशन के होते थे, हल्का फुल्का उसके अंदर डिफेंस की बातें होती थी, पर वो भी कौन किससे सामान ले रहा है, क्या कॉर्पोरेशन होगी। आजकल जब जाते हैं तो उससे पहले सबसे बड़ा क्वेश्चन ये होता है, कोई नई जंग छिड़ने वाली है या उस जंग का कोई सोल्यूशन निकलने वाला है, क्या मीडिएशन होने वाली है स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज पे, या ताइवान के अंदर जंग छिड़ने वाली है, क्या भारत को जो तेल आ रहा है या गैस आ रहा है वो कहां से ले पाएगा, यूएई से लेगा, ईरान से होगा, स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज में होगा, रशिया में होगा। तो वर्ल्ड एक तरह से 1945 से पहले जा चुका है, जो अभी एक टॉप बैंकर उदय कोटक जी ने भी कहा था कि एकदम पूरा जो अभी तक हुआ है वो तो शुरुआत है, आगे बहुत कुछ होने वाला है। भारत का भी एक वेसल अभी अनफॉर्चुनेटली अटैक किया गया है, तो पूरा इस ब्रॉड डायमेंशन को कि क्या चल रहा है, भारत की सिक्योरिटी नीड क्या है, जब फॉरेन जा रहे हैं प्रधानमंत्री तो वो वहां पे क्या इंपॉर्टेंट डिस्कशंस है, क्या नई अलायंसेस बन रही हैं, यूएई ओपेक से बाहर जा रहा है, क्योंकि अब जो देश का डिफेंस है वो पूरा एक तरह से 360 डिग्री बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस में, बहुत सारे शैटरिंग ऑफ एस्टैब्लिश्ड रूल्स के अंदर से गुजर रहा है। ये सब डिस्कस करने के लिए मुझे खुशी है, पहली बारी हमारे चैनल पे जुड़ रहे हैं लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल राज शुक्ला जी। थैंक यू सर फॉर ज्वाइनिंग एंड टेकिंग आउट टाइम।
Thank you. Great pleasure to be with you and to be conversing on national security.
थैंक यू सर। सर अगर मैं पहले सवाल से करूं, जो MSV हाजी अली सिविलियन कार्गो वेसल है, ट्रैवल कर रहा है, उसको अटैक किया जाता है, वो डूब जाता है, भारत की MEA इसको अनएक्सेप्टेबल बोलती है, पर ये जो सारा स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज की क्राइसिस है, इसमें पहला सवाल ही अगर किया जाए, क्योंकि आज ही देश में तेल डीजल का प्राइस बढ़ा है, इन्फ्लेशन होगी, गोल्ड पे कुछ नॉर्म्स आए हैं, वर्क फ्रॉम होम हो रहा है, तो ये जो सप्लाई चेन डिसरप्ट हुई है, इस पे कुछ लोग सवाल उठा रहे हैं कि भारतीय नेवी का क्या रोल है, या हमारा एज अ सिक्योरिटी क्या रोल किया जाना है, क्योंकि यूएस भी बहुत पीछे जाके बैठ चुका है। तो व्हाट इज द सिचुएशन सर विद स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज, सप्लाई चेन्स, व्हाट इज इंडिया टू डू?
जो आपका ये प्रश्न है उससे पहले the concept that you laid out, उसके बारे में मैं 2-3 बातें कहना चाहूँ। One is कि I wish to draw the attention of your viewers to one of the most remarkable strategic minds the world has ever seen, which is Kautilya, Chanakya. So Chanakya said centuries back कि अगर शास्त्र को भूलोगे तो अपनी संस्कृति खोलोगे, शस्त्र का त्याग करोगे तो राष्ट्र। My generation, since we inherited our military traditions from the British, तो हमको पढ़ाया गया क्लॉज़विट्ज़, महान Western thinkers, Henry Kissinger, they were also great minds. But I don't think there has been anybody as clairvoyant. इतनी clarity मैंने किसी में नहीं देखी, who's telling you, and he's not talking really of religion, but he's saying don't distance yourself from your civilizational wisdom. हमारा तो 5-6 हजार साल का इतिहास है. Americans are good, but 250 साल पुराने. Our wisdom has to be better. So Chanakya will be wiser than Kissinger. And what is he saying in that sense? Civilized. See, the Chinese have been smart. They have taken all the military attributes of the American military and exceeded them. So precisionary, space capacities, but they never forgot the wisdom of Sun Tzu or Clausewitz. हमने थोड़ी गलती की. We embraced all Western traditions in far greater measure than was required. और जो दूसरा वाक्य है वो और भी महत्वपूर्ण. When Chanakya says कि शस्त्र का त्याग करोगे तो राष्ट्र ही खोलोगे. He's not making a case for militarization. He's saying sensibly position your instrument of force in your strategic calculus. So you have to think about it. And I'm glad you asked me this question, because no militaries change by themselves. They only change by pressure from ideation which comes from civilian quarters. तो जो हमारी सिविलियन कम्युनिटी है उसमें जब तक नेशनल सिक्योरिटी के प्रति रुचि नहीं बढ़ेगी, they don't invest in ideation of national security, we will always punch below our weight. So in that sense, the instrument of force has to be positioned in the strategic categories. Ideation, resourcing, budgeting. दूसरा, हमारे देश में we are all aware of ये जो वाक्य है कि वसुदेव कुटुंबकम, बड़ा विवेक है इसमें. It's got great depth. One earth, one family, one futures. But you will be able to structure this reality only when you are powerful. If you're not powerful, आपकी सुनेगा कौन? And in that sense, I always recall Swami Vivekananda, who says that the world is a gymnasium where nations come to make themselves strong. So don't be strategically innocent. Bole mat ban. Ye akhada hai. You have to wrestle your way to the top. That is the second thing. And the third, I wanted to point to the wisdom of one of our most remarkable army chiefs, General Krishna Swami Sundarji, who said that, listen, it is for the politicians and the diplomats to dwell ad lib on intent. What will China do? What will Pakistan do? What could the Americans do? ठीक है, करना चाहिए. The military must focus on capacities and capacities alone. Because while capacities take generations to create, intentions change overnight. अब आप इन तीनों का मिश्रण करें, it will give you an answer. Of course, that vessel has been shot at. But you certainly can't become a blue water navy if you're not invested in it. What is our defense budget? 1.98% of the GDP. I was just in Europe. Poland is spending 4.8%. So what has happened, let me tell you, कि पिछले 10-12 साल में, in fact, let me say it up front, this government has initiated the boldest, most comprehensive reforms in national security since independence. Full credit. So the establishment of the CDS, DMA, I have seen these battles in my career. And, I never thought, I took over the Baramulla division from General Anil Chauhan. I never thought in my lifetime there'll be a CDS and Anil Chauhan would be the CDS. Because there was so much opposition to it, but it happened. The DMA, new normals in our strategic outlook. I spent 44 years in the military. हमने पाकिस्तान को सिर्फ maps में मारा था. Sorry. इस बार we hit them in Rawalpindi, Skardu, Bholari. कि कितना भी कर ले, military to military, no. They know. Then on 10th of May, they were helpless, hapless. Their skies were naked. And it was a righteous war. क्योंकि जो आपने दहशत करी थी हमारे ऊपर, सालों तक, it was cheap cowardice. And we finally gave it back to them. Calibrated restraint. So, defense coming out of the shadows of foreign policy. So those who are in the national security space, they are remarkable achievements. But given, and we can discuss it later, the world is undergoing a military renaissance. You see what's happening in Ukraine and the West Asian sphere. So given these changes, our national security makeover is well begun, but only half done. We have a long way to travel. And one of the points I've been making for very long is that the time has come for us to make a turn to the seas. We have been too long focused on the LC, LAC. They are important, but you have a coastline of 11,000 kilometers plus. ANC jab khadi hui thi, Andaman Nicobar Command, there was another outstanding gentleman, Admiral Arun Prakash, former naval chief. Unko aap kabhi bulaye. I remember he said that the ANC is a natural aircraft carrier to project our power across Malacca, perhaps into the Hormuz. But we didn't do it. We didn't resource it. So the questions that you asked, the only military today which is really capable of projecting power across two oceans is the American military. China, despite all its investments in defense, is still finding it difficult to project power 100 kilometers, Taiwan tak. So, aapka prashna is absolutely genuine, but it takes time. It takes capacities to project power into the Hormuz across Malacca. You have to resource it with budgets. So, of course, we must be able to do that. But for that, you have to invest. And I think this should be a wake-up call to us because we seem to be returning to an era of choke point conflicts. आपके दर्शकों को मैं याद दिला दूं 1956 Suez crisis. Something similar happened. And because the British failed to project power, it led to their what they call the Suez moment.
Mhm.
Because they failed to project power, it led to a precipitous decline in British power. And America, ascended, took their place. So बिल्कुल अभी तो आप हॉर्मूज पे प्रश्न पूछ रहे हैं. मलक्का is even more critical.
सर
Should we?
इफ आई मे जॉइन सर, आप जब बोल रहे हैं कि अमेरिका इज द ओनली नेवी केपेबल ऑफ प्रोजेक्टिंग दिस पावर, तो हरमोज पे तो अभी अमेरिका भी टू
Two
ओशन,
oceans.
पर अभी तो सर हरमोज पे अमेरिका भी ढंग से प्रोजेक्ट नहीं कर पाई है, उनके भी एयरक्राफ्ट कैरियर जाके पीछे खड़े हो गए. तो क्या ये नया नॉर्मल हो गया, जो आपने बात की मिलिट्री रेनेसांस, या अब इकोनॉमिक्स ऑफ वॉर, क्या वो एक चेंज कर रहे हैं? जिस तरह ईरान जैसा छोटा देश जो सैंक्शंस के अंदर था, मिलिटरीली इतने सालों से सैंक्शंस में था, तब भी उसने सरवाइव तो कर ही लिया, जैसे मैसे करके सरवाइव कर गया. कुछ लोग बोल रहे हैं वर्ल्ड की सप्लाई चेन चोक करके ब्लैकमेल कर रहा है, यूएई पूरा वेस्ट एशिया हिला दिया है, तो वो सरवाइव करके जीत भी सकता है जब नेगोशिएशन टेबल पे. वी डू नॉट नो व्हाट विल हैपन इन द नेगोशिएशन, बट सर उस तरह से क्या भी डॉक्ट्रिन्स भी चेंज होंगी कि हम किस तरह जंग लड़ेंगे, और nations with lesser money also, because technology has become cheap, can survive. and भारत की जो पूरी मिलिट्री डॉक्ट्रिन थी वो सर्वाइवल की थी, डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन ऑफ पावर अक्रॉस नेशंस तो शायद अब शुरू हुआ है जब सिविलियन लोग हम बात कर रहे हैं. इससे पहले when इकोनॉमी ही नहीं थी तो किसको क्या इंटरेस्ट होगा भैया कि बाहर जाके हम क्या करेंगे. जो आपने बोला कि सिविलियन इंटरेस्ट इज इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर फंडिंग टू कम टू मिलिट्री. तो when you were as you have seen the evolution sir, has this changed as मिडिल क्लास बढ़ा है, अब हम बात कर रहे हैं कि हमारी नेवी क्या कर रही है. एंड सेकंड एस्पेक्ट जो ये वॉर एस्पेक्ट है, इसमें चीपर टेक्नोलॉजीज का राज आने वाला है कि आप कितने चीपली लड़ सकते हैं.
बिल्कुल आपके जो सारे सवाल हैं बहुत वाजिब हैं. So I think in your preface you said Bill Clinton 1992 said it's the economy stupid. मतलब in domestic politics and in international affairs, at the end of the day what mattered was economy. हमको ही बताया जाता था तो साहब what matters is onion prices. Of late there have been two swivels. One is that geopolitics has swiveled from economics to national security. I say it's national security stupid. And two, technology is driving national security like never before. Never before. आप देखिए इन दोनों चीजों पे और गहराव से बात करते हैं. So the first point, I was just telling you, Germany today is spending 5% of its GDP on defense. Poland 4.8%, Japan 5%, South Korea 4.6%. Japan and South Korea are talking of perhaps having their own nuclear arsenals because they doubt the credibility of America's nuclear deterrence. Could you ever imagine the Europeans would tell us, Iraq, Afghanistan, once when they were asked to give troops, they offered dogs in contempt. जब उनसे कहा गया कि साहब पेट्रोल at night, they said we only patrol by day. Mockery. Can you imagine an army says we don't patrol by night? This was because of a false belief across the globe that we have seen the last of kinetics. We've heard this in India, लड़ाई नहीं होने वाली. It was an absolute, shall we say, a wrong conclusion to say the least. And this was because we had a prolonged period of peace. Could Europe ever imagine missiles flying over the heartland of Europe? They said, oh, stupid Africans and Asians fight. We don't. Europe's contribution was 19% to the global GDP, but they also contributed to 50% of social spending because they said defense की तो जरूरत ही नहीं है. अब देखिए ट्रम्प साहब ने उनके कान पकड़ के उनको स्पेंड करवाए डिफेंस. So you're absolutely right. That has happened suddenly. Now capacities don't get created; they take time. दूसरा आपने बात कही ना, देखिए national security is so complicated and so complex. That's why it needs the best minds. US Navy, of course, 160 ships of the Iranians have been sunk to the bottom. Remarkable achievement. भाई एक शिप को बनाने में 2 to 3 साल लगते हैं. So 160 into 3 means 400 years worth of maritime assets are at the bottom of the sea. But as you yourself observed, the US Army, Navy, because it is large, it is not small enough, agile enough, autonomous enough, it cannot enter the strait. And on the back of drones, what you said, the power of asymmetry, the salience of cost. Today, a Shahid drone, is as potent as a Tomahawk. For every dollar that the Iranians spend on the Shahid, the West spends $28 in intercepting it. जो मिसाइल्स थी इरानियंस की, जो 13 बेस हैं गल्फ में, अमेरिकन बेसेस, all the missiles were intercepted, but many of the drones got through. The Americans have lost, despite an overwhelming military victory, they have lost more aircraft in the Gulf, Epic Fury, than they lost since Vietnam combined. Look at that. So they have had a marvelous victory, but it has come at great cost. Americans have decimated the Iranians militarily. But you're right, they closed the strait. Ab dekhiye, what is the larger purpose? It is such a complicated issue. America has 800 military bases, 11 aircraft carriers. So they take talent from all over the world. Elon Musk, Satya Nadella, unko apni universities mein late hain. They give them good academic space. And that talent creates technology and wealth. और उस वेल्थ में से कुछ वो लगाते हैं टू हैव अ वर्ल्ड क्लास मिलिट्री. दे आर नॉट फूल्स. व्हाई? द वर्ल्ड क्लास मिलिट्री अंडरराइट्स द डॉलर. It ensures that when it is in their interest, Maduro is extracted. But and the purpose of that military is to keep global business, commerce, oil flowing. It underwrites freedom of navigation. But the Iranians have choked that freedom of navigation. So they have actually posed the biggest question to the purpose of the American military. Ki bhai, you may have 800 bases, 11 aircraft carriers, but you have not been able to ensure oil flows. Now, this is how complicated it is. That is the reality. Despite it is a stunning military victory. I can tell you, military to military, very few militaries can do it. But in terms of political outcomes, has it converted? No, you rightly observed. Look at the strategic reality. अभी जो दो बेसिक मुद्दे थे, न्यूक्लियर डस्ट, वो जो एनरिच्ड यूरेनियम है, वो अभी भी ईरानियन के हाथ में, वो नहीं दे रहे हैं. और जो एनरिचमेंट है यूरेनियम का, उस पे भी कोई सोल्यूशन नहीं है. So people are saying that the Barack Obama's JCPOA produced more outcomes than the entire US invasion has done. And I just heard Trump saying that perhaps we'll have to go back to bombing. So it is so complicated. In our case, we have to very carefully see, and we need very bright minds like you and many others, military, civilian, technologists, all to come together to see ki I say that we have begun a national security makeover, but we have to complicate it. And see, another reason I'll tell you why we simply have to do it now. When I was growing up, मेरे को याद है टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया में एक लेख था, द वॉलफ्लावर एंड द डांस ऑफ द डायनासोर्स. तो उस आर्टिकल का जो लब्बो लबाब था ये था कि इंडिया वाज अ वॉलफ्लावर एंड द टू सुपर पावर्स यूएसए एंड सोवियत यूनियन वुड नॉट इवन आस्क अस फॉर अ डांस. टुडे वी आर द टोस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड. आवर पासपोर्ट मैटर्स. We forget we are the fourth largest economy. I think we have dipped a little, but we'll recover. Lowy Institute says in comprehensive national power, we are number 3. So aap dekh le, 4-3. Stanford says in AI competitiveness, we are number 3. So I argue, who above us than USA and China? We are now in the big league. We have to step up our game. Not only in terms of economy, it's very important, but economy, technology, wealth, talent, national security. अब ये unfortunately हमारे यहाँ सोच ही नहीं है. We have very talented people, but most of them are just going into engineering. Don't we need talent in international relations, in diplomacy, geopolitics of chips, geopolitics of space? If we have to grow in a comprehensive manner, we need all good lawyers like you, all kinds of talent. And that has not happened in adequate measure. And especially now we are in the big league. So I'm saying a lot has happened. CDS, DMA, Atmanirbharta and defense. You see, when I was growing up, if you spoke to a private sector chap, it was a career-ending move. It was taboo. Today, private sector and startups are at the heart of our defense rejuvenation because they are agile. Our PSUs cannot deliver the same agility. एक स्टार्टअप है एंड्यूरल करके पामर लकी का अमेरिकन स्टार्टअप till 6 years back he was playing with VR headsets having fun. This year he has churned out YXF-44 Fury, which is an AI enabled near stealth unmanned fighter platform, and he has churned it out in 568 days. हमारा एम का जो है 10 साल में बनता है. So जो आप कह रहे हैं ना, what has happened? The military renaissance, two things have happened. One is the character of war has changed. March 2022, I left the military. Drones were used only in weddings. Today, drones have become instruments of strategic influence. Ukraine this year is buying 8 million drones, more than the artillery they fired last year. अगर आप फ्रंटियर पे जाएं रशिया यूक्रेन के, tanks don't move, artillery has been pushed back, infantrymen are killed in 6 minutes. The only thing that works is drones. Drones and AI. AI के माध्यम से with this Claude and Maven, which AI enabled command control system, and Claude जो Anthropic का है, Maduro को निकाला, the Americans had pattern of life competencies. They knew where Maduro was for the last 72 hours. Now, it's a very complex combination of space, cyber, and all that. But they knew exactly where he was. And through natural language queries, they asked where will he be day after evening? Where will he be tomorrow morning? In which safe house? What is the best asset to take him out? And they called the Delta Force and said, these are your points. Choose your points of insertion and extraction. From a common operational air picture which was available to President Trump and to General Dan Kane. हमारे time में we used to wander over maps. Look at the great change. Today targeting is being done not at human speed. हमारी आंखें जो हैं दर्द करती थी, हम 2, 3, 4 बजे तक टारगेट्स को हम देखते थे. Today Americans have engaged, developed targeting packages at machine speed. That is why they have been able to target 15,000 targets in Epic Fury. 28 फरवरी को 5 मिनट के अंदर 8:10 to 8:15 50 political leaders, Iran, political, military, religious, were taken out. It is a stunning military achievement. So
सर ये सर स्टनिंग मिलिट्री अचीवमेंट एक तरह से पायरेक विक्ट्री नहीं हो रही, क्योंकि अगर आप इकोनॉमिकली नहीं जीत पाते तो आपकी विक्ट्री का सर फायदा क्या है? बिकॉज एंड ऑफ द डे यूएस जीतेगा ईरान से, ये तो मेरे ख्याल से क्वेश्चन ही नहीं था, कंपेयर टू द साइज ऑफ द इकोनॉमी, द मिलिट्री, द इन्फ्लुएंस, द बेसिस. बट एज थिंग्स स्टैंड, और मैं ये भारत के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में जानना चाह रहा हूँ, क्योंकि हमारा एक नेबर हमसे इकोनॉमिकली बहुत छोटा है पाकिस्तान, और एक इकोनॉमिकली चाइना का डिफरेंट पोजीशन है. सो हमें तो जो चीपर अच्छा लड़ पाए उसका भी खतरा है, और जिसके पास ज्यादा पैसा है वो लड़ पाए उससे भी खतरा है. सो वी हैव टू सी बोथ द थिंग्स. हमारा ऐसा तो है नहीं कि हम उस तरह से है. तो ईरान कम पैसे से यूएस को अगर नेगोशिएबल टेबल पे ही खत्म करता है, एज वी लॉयर से, इफ इट एंड्स इन मीडिएशन, नो साइड हैज वन, बोथ साइड्स हैव वन. बट लॉ में वो अच्छी चीज है, बट फॉर यूएस थोड़ी ना अच्छी चीज है कि सुपर पावर इज हैविंग टू एंड ऑन अ टेबल with a third, fourth rate power. So that then raises the question of this superb military victory, operation successful, patient dead for US. Is that not the case?
So see, Iran has survived. Iran has not won. Say, I'm just saying hypothetically, in a case, in a war with China, if our entire navy gets sunk, your entire AD is taken out, or your cities are exposed, you may still survive. But is it a victory? So, yes, but you make a good point. Military capacity is good, but it is not complete. You're right. So, इन्हीं चीजों पे तो हमको गहरा अध्ययन करना है कि भाई जो हमारा existing defense budget है, how can we optimize it further? Should we have tanks, artillery, or should we invest in drones, AI, data readiness, cloud? Optimize the current budget and then see what do we need to invest in the future. That is why I say these are deep questions. And invest in capacities not because they will deliver you the ultimate solution, They expand political options. मिसाल के तौर पर, if you're the prime minister and I'm your general, and you decide India is a good space because we are under complete civilian control. The decision is yours. And you tell me कि देखो टाइम आ गया, हफीज सईद को निकालना है पाकिस्तान से, उठा के ले आओ जैसे मेड्यूरो को किया. I will only be able to do it if I have invested in space, cyber, and all those capacities. The Israelis knew where Nasrallah was sleeping every night, almost metaphorically, since 2011. They took him out in only on 30th September 2024. So capacities have to be. वहां कैसे होता है कि दो यूनिट्स हैं 8200 9300. उसमें वो क्या करते हैं? They visit schools and colleges and graduating pupils. They pick up the best, rock star pay. एंड देयर आर नो, कोई बंदिशें नहीं है. आपको 2 साल रहना है, 2 साल रहिए, 10 साल रहना है, 10 साल रहिए. सो इट डजंट कर्ब द यूथ. यू वांट अ लाइफ लॉन्ग स्टे. 2 साल बाद आप सिलिकॉन वैली जाते हैं. दे मेंटेन कॉन्टैक्ट. यू मे बी एन एंटरप्रेन्योर, दे मेंटेन कॉन्टैक्ट. यू मे बी टीचिंग इन ऑक्सफोर्ड, दे मेंटेन कॉन्टैक्ट. 8 to 100 में कोई क्लासेस नहीं होती है. दे हैव प्रैक्टिकल लेसन्स. नसरुल्लाह को निकालना है. Look at that. Because they do this kind of stuff, space, cyber, technology, they are the ultimate in action. And once they leave, they are sought after by all business entities. We have to get these kind of technology geeks into the military. So the military has to be an attractive proposition in those terms. Now that is the Israeli tradition. So we have to build our own traditions of this kind, and I'm not making a military argument. National security in the broadest sense is prosperity, it is equity, it is technological prowess, and it is also military readiness. In सब चीजों के मिश्रण से we become a strong nation. I just written a book on civil military fusion, and I've quoted a verse or a line from what somebody in my village told me. And I, of course, interpreted it, but what did he say? What a wonderful sentence. He said, Saraswati, Lakshmi, or Durga Commission. So you must have centers of academic excellence, R&D. From that R&D or those centers will create talent. Use some of that talent to create wealth, respect wealth creation. And from that wealth, nurse your instruments of power. So I'm a big proponent of this. Go back to your civilizational tenets. They are rich in wisdom. और हमने क्या किया? I saw it from the time I was commissioned in 1982. Silos, civil, military, academia, government, ये उससे बात नहीं करना, वो से. But we are very good at saying, भाई तुम्हारी पे क्या है, मेरी पे क्या है, आगे कौन बैठेगा, पीछे कौन बैठेगा. That's not. So these are the days of civil military fusion. So what I'm saying, जो आपने चाइना और पाकिस्तान की बात की ना, तो मेरी थ्योरी है विद पाकिस्तान, तो यू मस्ट हैव कॉम्बैट ओवरमैच. अरे उसकी इकोनॉमी इज 1/10 of our economy. Somebody was saying their market cap is less than Bombay Stock Exchange. और वो हमको आंखें दिखाता है. Of course we sorted them out now, but our economic differential must reflect in strategic military poise. उनकी हिम्मत ही नहीं पड़नी चाहिए. If they know that Hafiz Saeed can be lifted, or if DGISI is, a terror culprit, he'll be taken out in a decapitation strike. वो नहीं करेंगे ये, या 2 बार सोचेंगे. With China, it has to be smarter. For the reasons you pointed out, the military component of the power differential with China is $450 billion year on year. So we have to do the other corrections, cultural corrections, civil military fusion. If Ukraine, just listen to this, Ukraine, a country without an air force or a navy, has held the second most powerful military in the world for 4 years at bay on the back of technological innovation. Can we not, on the back of technological innovation and civil military fusion, deter China? Of course we can. So it has to be a smart component of all this.
But sir, if I ask a question on that, वो ये है सर कि यूक्रेन को फंड, रिसोर्सेज सारा यूरोप का पावर आया हुआ है. एक टाइम पे यूएस का पावर भी आया हुआ था. तो इट इज नॉट एग्जैक्टली इंडिया को इन अ सेंस आइसोलेटेड स्टैंड करना है. हमें कोई सपोर्ट करने नहीं आएगा. इनफैक्ट हम पाकिस्तान से लड़ेंगे तो इन अ सेंस इस बार भी ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में हम एक तरह से प्रॉक्सी टर्की, चाइना के साथ भी अपनी कैपेबिलिटीज का टेस्ट कर ही रहे थे इसके ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के अंदर. तो सर जो इंडिया की स्टैंड अलोन पोजीशन है वर्सेस अ कंट्री लाइक यूक्रेन या ईरान के पीछे भी चाइना खड़ा है, द बेनिफिट ऑफ बीइंग बिग is that you are big, but the problem of being big is nobody is with you. आपको सब कुछ अपने आप ही करना है. तो सर थोड़ा ये डिफरेंस नहीं है इंडिया या किसी भी ऐसे देश से?
I'm not saying it is exact. I'm saying it's similar. Take inspiration. I'm saying they did not have an air force or a navy. We have a powerful air force. We have a powerful navy. All that we need is these other cultural, structural corrections. देखिए, the pace of reform is slow. We've had 2 chiefs of defense staff. अभी तक theater command नहीं हो. ये तो हमारी गलती है ना. DRDO reform is slow. PSUs are making weapon systems of the past. They are not in a position to do AI, space, cyber, and all this. ये किसकी गलती है? And see, I'm making another point today. For long, we have got away with blaming political will. My understanding today is that political will is ahead of civil, military, technological, administrative bureaucracies. तो ये हमने करना है ना. कौन आके करेगा? बिलायत से तो कोई आएगा नहीं. We have to do this. And if we cannot do these corrections, we must transform. We tend to tinker. Transformation at the rate of tinkering will not do. These are the brutal lessons of geopolitics. और देखिए, जियोपॉलिटिक्स और नेशनल सिक्योरिटी एक चीज साफ, इसमें कोई स्पिन नहीं चलता है. आप ये नैरेटिव घुमा दें, वो नैरेटिव घुमा दें, असलियत जो है वो सामने आ जाएगी. We realized this to a great horror in 62. But whenever we have got our act together, 1971 was a grand victory. Sindoor was an emphatic victory. So I am making a case for us to come together on national. Of course, we are not Ukraine. We are far more powerful. But I am saying, can we be, now we are in the big league. We should be able to deter China. We should need nobody. I agree totally. I'm a big votary of strategic autonomy. But strategic autonomy also entails the wisdom to build your own capacities. Strategic autonomy hawa mein to nahi ho sakti. So, and not military capacity is not on jingoism, but calibrated, technologically enabled, sophisticated. It is an instrument in the hands of the Prime Minister, whoever the Prime Minister is. कि साहब आपने इस्तेमाल करना है, आप करिए. We are in a very happy space we don't realize. I mean, I'm a general today. My counterparts in Pakistan will have 4 plots. I don't have 1. But I'm convinced I'm in a happier space. I have so much love, respect, and trust. आपकी जो मोहब्बत है, it is genuine. I sense it. Look at China. 100 generals, corrupt, sacked. They had their own problems. I'm pointing out to the areas where we are in a happy space, but in areas where we can do far better. And I keep making this point. National security is beyond the soldier. Everybody has to come together in these areas. It is a cross-domain space.
सर अभी स्ट्रेट ऑफ हर्मोज का एक क्राइसिस चल रहा है. आई वांट टू ब्रिंग दिस ऑन क्योंकि जब ये प्रेसिडेंट ट्रंप गए हैं चाइना, तो ताइवान क्वेश्चन पे मीडिया रिपोर्ट्स के प्रेसिडेंट जी वार्न्स कि भैया इफ नॉट हैंडल्ड प्रॉपर्ली कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हो जाएगा ताइवान क्वेश्चन को लेके. तो सर ये एक जो रस्साकसी चल रही है, एक टेस्टिंग ऑफ स्ट्रेंथ चल रहा है, नूरा कुश्ती चल रही है, जो भी बोलिए, एटलीस्ट यूएस और चाइना के बीच में. और ये क्या आपको लगता है ताइवान एक लाइव इशू बन सकता है थोड़ा यूएस चाइना पर्सपेक्टिव में? एंड देन मैं आना चाहूंगा उसके बाद कि इंडिया को क्या क्या करना पड़ेगा इस डायनामिक न्यू वर्ल्ड में, कंसिडरिंग इस तरह का वहां पे द्वंद्व युद्ध चल रहा है.
ये जो आपको सवाल का जो पहला हिस्सा है ना, उसके लिए ट्रंप की जो शख्सियत है उसको समझना जरूरी है. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a genius at doing that, but I have my own estimate. Is Trump a fool? I don't think so. He can be obnoxious. जिस तरह वो बात करते हैं, sometimes he can be extremely non-presidential, as his wife himself says, Melania. But he's a smart cookie. देखो smart कैसे है. Whether you like it or not, in the first term, he told his military, here are $1.5 trillion. Become the most powerful. I will need you. President Obama had said America does not need a space command. Trump created a space command. And today he says, he has got a very great interpretation of it. He says, my space force, it helps me keep an eye on the nuclear dust. I also know what the Chinese dark fleet is doing. उसमें ये ही इज अ स्मार्ट कुकी. उसको पता है कहाँ इन्वेस्ट करना है, नहीं करना. अभी जो नेशनल सिक्योरिटी वाली बात, In fact, before coming to your show, I was just watching his press gaggle back on Air Force One. He says, Z asked me this question: will you intervene on Taiwan? And he said, I told President Z, this is one question I don't answer. I repeat, when he was standing with President Z, I think in that temple of heaven, 5 बार पूछा गया कि Taiwan पे बात हुई, and he said, China is beautiful, China is beautiful, China is beautiful. He didn't answer that question. So I'm just making an estimate. उसके माइंड में क्या है? उसके माइंड में ये है कि मागा, America is to be made great again. And he knows that the long-term threat is China. And en route to China, people need to be sorted out. So Iran needs to be sorted out. जो करना है right or wrong वो कर रहा है. यूरोप को उसने कहा है, देखो, you are rich enough, आप अपने आप रशिया को संभालो. We will not, and he stopped funding and all that. You pay for your own defense. And he's focusing on Indo-Pacific. He also knows that China is not the Soviet Union. 1980 में, the Chinese economy was 10% of the American economy in current dollar terms. Today it is 74%. It is my understanding that apart from the military and apart from AI, in most other domains, China is ahead. Their ship production is 200 times, warship production 3 times, steel 20 times, cement 10 times, electric vehicles, battery में तो बहुत ही आगे. Trump knows it. वो जानता है that China is not a pushover, so he's very differential to Z. He was not as differential to Zelensky, right or wrong. Morals की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ. He respects power, brute power. But वो ये भी जानता है कि अगर Z साहब ने Trump किया, this is only my estimation, and the Americans do not or cannot intervene, that will be like the Suez moment for the British. देखिए, अगर वो नहीं intervene करता है, ताइवान क्या सोचेगा, जापान क्या सोचेगा, साउथ कोरिया क्या सोचेगा? It will be a precipitous decline. So he's saying nothing, but he's building his capacities. And if Z does Taiwan, it is my personal hunch that he will intervene. So he doesn't answer the question. And he knows that, like he was asked a question, he says, is Z a dictator? He says, irrelevant. He's the president of China. I have to deal with him. तो वो इन चीजों में नहीं पड़ता है कि डिक्टेटर है क्या नहीं है. असलियत से वो he deals with the reality in that sense. But there are problems. It's not so easy. The American debt is $36 trillion. The debt servicing is by 2036 will be more than their budget, defense budget, which many economists say that when your debt servicing becomes larger than your budget, it is the beginning of decline. So I'm not saying his tariffs were a tool to get revenue. It's not reduce the fiscal deficit. So that is why I say national security is a very complicated game. And in India, we need to create this whole ecosystem of cross-domain expertise, not just the military, civilians, commentators, to get all these questions together. So that is my understanding here.
Sir, you said that if one analyzes Trump's mind, and मेरे हिसाब से तो सर कोई व्यक्ति जो 4-5 डिफरेंट करियर्स में अच्छा करे वो ब्रिलियंट ही है. एक करियर में अच्छा करने में भी you can be lucky. You got a lucky.
You try being the best real estate dealer in New York. मात खा जाएंगे आप.
Real estate for a male celebrity. He got payment at one time for being a male celebrity. आजकल, not to be misogynistic, but easier for females to be celebrities in US system than for a male businessman to be a celebrity in 90s without social media. I think that's a very tough nut to crack. आज भी कोई male celebrity ऐसा नहीं है. फिर प्रेसिडेंट बनना, तो वो तो सर इंटेलिजेंट है. अब उसका माइंडसेट क्या है वो लगा है. पर आपने जैसे यूएस को एनालाइज किया, Chinese mindset, because you must have studied it for decades, Chinese mindset में do you think Chinese mindset would want to make a move on Taiwan? Because एक पक्ष तो ये भी है ना कि वेनेजुएला में जो हुआ उससे चाइना का नुकसान, ईरान में जो हुआ उससे चाइना का नुकसान, तो चाइना की भी इमेज क्या हो रही है. और एक मैं इसमें ऐड कर दूं, बलूचिस्तान से भी चाइनीज कंपनी छोड़ के जाती है और वो स्टेटमेंट इशू करती है कि सिक्योरिटी रीजन से हम जा रहे हैं, तो क्या बलूचिस्तान में भी बाहर, तो चाइना भी तो हिट्स पे हिट्स ले ही जा रहा है सर. तो चाइनीज इमेज के लिए डू यू थिंक दे विल act out somewhere to show we still matter, we are actually number 2, we are not a paper tiger?
So see, once again, I can only estimate. China does realize कि भाई militarily USA is streets ahead. it must be admiring what the Americans have done, because the Chinese can't do it. They can't project power in Malacca, at least not today. उनके पास 2-3 aircraft carriers हैं. But they know that in the other domains, they have really built capacity. You see, the Chinese have to be understood. A lot of people say they have problems. Of course, उनकी क्या real estate crisis है, debt crisis है, economy is not doing too well. But what they have done, this manufacturing scale. I was in a Morgan Stanley की एक summit थी सिंगापुर में 4-5 महीने पहले. I was speaking, and before me the chairman BYD was speaking. और उनकी जो कार कंपनी है BYD. Look, he told an amazing tale. He says कि I was called by the Politburo and said that BYD has to beat Tesla. Come up with a plan. So a week later I went back to them, and there was a detailed plan, but I said Tesla is spending $5 billion on R&D. We need to beat them. The Politburo said take 15. 15. BYD, just a company, has created 11 research institutes. Delhi में 11 think tank नहीं है. They have created 120,000 engineers who just do R&D. As a result, today, in the 3 domains that matter, energy, artificial intelligence, and robotics, energy and robotics, they are streets ahead of the Americans, BYD. Artificial intelligence में पीछे हैं. Does it surprise you now that BYD has swept Volkswagen out of the car market? और BYD की जो carriers हैं, they are also used to carry troops in the Taiwan contingency. Xiaomi, which used to make mobiles, is now making cars and is also using its robotics to make ammunition. देखिए civil military fusion, वो हमारी तरह सोचते ही नहीं है. हमारे यहाँ बेचारे startups, though many of them have done well, उसको हम फंसा देंगे L1, repeat order, all kinds of regulation. If you're a startup in China and you are bright, say you're dealing with computers, PLA will give you an order for computers. You'll wonder, PLA will give you an order. They are testing you out. They will hold your hand till commercial viability. And if they find you're brilliant, they'll say, सब कुछ छोड़ दो, मेरे साथ आओ, पैसे की problem नहीं है. Together we have to defeat that American startup which is lurking in the horizon. Their whole system is strategic, competitive. They are beating the Americans at capitalism. In fact, मैं civil military fusion की बात कर रहा हूँ. Military civil fusion lies at the heart of their national security strategy. Z says, a system without talent is like a fountain with no water, a tree with no roots. This led to them investing in a 1,000 talents plan 20 years back, when they got all the sharpest Chinese, Turing medal winner, some near Nobel laureate, world over in areas like stealth, quantum, and said, come back to China, we need you. 1,000 talents plan. बड़ी जद्दोजहद की है उन्होंने. And today in most of these, they are the workshop of the world. In many of these areas, they are ahead. So in that sense, they have capacities, but unlike the Indian military, which is combat tested, or the American military, which is combat tested, they are not. They may turn out to be social media fluff, but जो capacities हैं उनमें वो आगे. Now my understanding is, देखो China कुछ भी कह ले, ultimately they are hard-nosed people. So they say, there is a proverb of theirs, one tiger on a hill. Unfortunately, India is not Pakistan. We are India. They know if they have to become a global power, India is their foremost rival. So one tiger on a hill. They will beat you. ये डोकलम वगैरह, they all measures to keep you balanced, off balance. I make the argument that the only way, or let me make 2 arguments, that for the first time in history, the world's number 1 economy in PP terms, China, and the number 3 economy in PP terms, India, are growing in close proximity. The Himalayas have been breached because of technology. There is no buffer like Tibet. So our geostrategic trajectories are bound to clash. The only way to keep them peaceful is by investing in deterrence. So you can have not one tiger on a hill, but 2 tigers on either slope if we invest in deterrence. So I'm saying we must invest in deterrence. उसके बाद खुल के बात करो उनके पास. But it is not easy because for years, because of missteps in foreign policy, you know our equation in trade. जब ये डोकलम में ये गलवान क्राइसिस हुई, उन्होंने ये जो बड़े बड़े एक्सकेवेटर्स वगैरह हैं ये बंद कर दिए हमको देना. So we have to, with China, we have to really step up our game, which is not happening in adequate measure, and the lag is growing if we are not careful. So ये है हकीकत हमारी. अब इस पे see this point that I made about third largest, fourth largest economy and all. Let me put it. India has considerable weight and influence, but we must not make the mistake of mistaking weight and influence for power. We yet have to convert much of that weight and influence into power. So it needs intelligence, humility, realism. And I return to my argument, national security needs the best minds. जो मैं कह रहा हूं, I should be questioned by 10 people. And we have to come to a reasonable, intelligent consensus on what we need to do.
Sir, what you say about power? अभी इस मीटिंग की एक फोटो आई है which is viral where President Trump and all political leaders are sitting and the entire money of the world, Elon Musk, Tim Cook, etc. वो सारे पीछे खड़े हैं. So power is power. या जो Games of Thrones की famous line है, knowledge is power, this is power, वो सब कुछ कर रहा होता है. And she tells her guards to take out a sword, puts him on ground and says power is power. बाकी सब बातें हैं कि money is power, knowledge is power, power is power. So sir, power is power में मैं अब इंडिया पे आना चाहूंगा. आपको क्या लग रहा है कि हमें क्या करना चाहिए and where are we lacking to, because world में अब जो एक तरह से लोग comfort zone में थे, आपने शुरू में बोला कि कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स नहीं होंगे, यूरोप नहीं होगा, अब आप यूरोप से आ रहे हैं कि पोलैंड ने बढ़ा दिया है अपना स्पेंडिंग, जर्मनी ने बढ़ा दिया है, ट्रंप ने कान पकड़ के किया हो पर बढ़ गया है. सो वंस इकोनॉमिक आउटपुट इन डिफेंस इज इंक्रीजिंग इन यूरोप, उसके भी कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस होंगे 5-7 साल बाद. इतना वेपनाइज करोगे तो कहीं तो यूज करोगे. They could also get aggressive in certain areas. आज लगता नहीं है because they sound very pacifist. आर्मी नहीं है, दो लोग मिलिट्री में है. But if money comes, other things could come up. We do not know what will happen 10 years down the line. उस मनी का कहीं तो यूज करना ही पड़ेगा आपको. खर्च किसके ले रहे हो और टेस्टिंग किसके लिए कर रहे हो. और इंडिया के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में सर जो हमारे 1.9 है, 2% है, व्हाट डू यू थिंक इमीडिएट टर्म्स में इंडिया को क्या स्टेप्स लेने चाहिए जो पिछले 2 साल में ग्लोबल ऑर्डर रीऑल्टर हुआ है उसको नजर में रखते हुए, बिकॉज़ वी आर लिविंग इन अ न्यू रियलिटी नाउ.
सबसे पहले हमको अपनी सोच बदलनी है. Our ideation has to become more ambitious in a calibrated manner. See, when I was a colonel, which is about 20 years back, एक बड़े famous सज्जन थे, let's call him a सज्जन gentleman, who used to give a lecture in Delhi, 10 reasons why India should not become a superpower. Why we don't need to become a superpower. और लोग ताली बजाते थे.
We actually had that.
They actually, in fact, I don't name him. Today, at least, we are saying कि विकसित भारत बनना है by 2040. We are setting some objectives. We are not being coy about it. We are saying that we must have a world-class military. That is one. But some things are not happening. I keep asking, if we were the leading nation in IT, why has that not converted into the same lead in artificial intelligence? AI, people say, is going to be the last human revolution. Iske baad AI bots are going to create technology of their own. Last month, a 15 drone swarm was fired in Russia, which was AI enabled. Selection of targets, engagement of targets by machines, not humans. So humans out of the loop. USA is investing $1 billion on AI every day. Eric Schmidt says, I am lucky to be in a country where all my crazy ideas, there's no dearth of money.
I get funded.
India में हमारे यहाँ ये सोच ही नहीं है. I am convinced in the military arena, there is no dearth of funds. The problem is regulation. Startups not getting orders. If they get orders, there are VCs willing to fund. अब ये जो complicated arguments हैं, we have to get out of them. When innovation is being delivered in Ukraine every 2 weeks, you can't have RFPs being churned out in years. जो हमारा procurement process. देखिए talent पे how important it is. When Trump came to power, he started a scheme called Det 201, which was to induct talent into the American military. What has he done? The CTOs of a Thinking Machines Lab, Palantir, top CTOs have been inducted as lieutenant colonels into the army and said, your technical expertise is needed by the army. They've taken a pay cut and come. अब ये सब चीजें हमको करनी है. It has to be a combination of ideation, action and narration. Ideation is hugely important. In our case, we undervalue it in terms of think tanks, in terms of, writings in the national security space. There is a chap called Chris Miller. He's written a book on geopolitics of chips. आप जरा उसको पढ़ लीजिए. It's not about technical stuff quoting. It's about the geopolitics of chips. Geopolitics of space. We keep quoting ISRO. ISRO is for exploration. It has got very little utility in the military space. LEO space matters for military capacities. USA has got 45,000 satellites in LEO. China has got 15. We have got 1 or 2. Because our thinking is sturdy. We are not ambitious enough. Look at the private sector. Government को इतना lecture करती है, and some of it is very, shall we say, वो जायज भी है, because government is sturdy in many ways. But in America, $975 billion are spent on R&D every year. $700 billion comes from the private sector. Musk and Cook and all these people. They are spending on R&D. China spends $545 billion. Our spending is less than $40 billion. Private sector ko to bhul hi jao. It is not why don't they invest? Why do all these smart minds in the private sector not see the obvious value in R&D? Now I raise these questions not to be pessimistic, but to say that unless we sort out these basic arguments, we will always flatter to deceive. These arguments have to be sorted out. Why are all these chaps, Elon Musk, Cook, Shook, why is Satya Nadella sitting in the United States? We have to create an ecosystem to retain talent. Kishore Mehbubani says that Indians beat the Chinese in the most competitive human laboratory in the world, USA. He says that the Indians in India, the ecosystem allows their productivity to be even 25% of their Indian counterparts in USA. India's GDP will be $25 trillion. तो ये जो बुनियादी मसले हैं, इनको सुलझाना बहुत जरूरी है. We have potential. We have 23 IITs. But tell me, in 75 years, how many Nobel laureates from these IITs?
Also, sir, our biggest companies, one has to be realistic, our biggest companies have not created a global product. कौन सी स्ट्रीम में हमारी कहीं पे गवर्नमेंट ग्रांट्स हैं, कहीं पे ओल्ड वर्ल्ड इंडस्ट्रीज हैं, कहीं पे बेटर प्रोसेसेस हैं, कहीं पे पॉपुलेशन क्लस्टर करके चलो कुछ वो सर्विस डिलीवरी शुरू हो गया. बट वन मेजर प्रोडक्ट व्हिच द वर्ल्ड हैज अडॉप्टेड फ्रॉम अस, nothing. Not even things on social media, not even a Facebook or a Instagram or a TikTok or anything. उसमें भी कितनी economies हैं, hard power की. We are not. We are basically.
See, let's draw an analogy with cricket. 1980s में, when I was growing up, so our pace bowling used to be opened by a guy called Bishan Singh Bedi. आपको याद है? He was a left arm spinner. और वो pace attack. When we used to ask, people around me, he said, no, Indians, we are not naturally built for pace. But when we got over all those cockeyed ideas today, isn't Bumrah creating, fear and havoc in the minds of batsmen from abroad? But एक सोच की बात. Mahendra Singh Dhoni came and invented the helicopter shot, or whatever that is. एक वो सोच हो जाएगी ना, that thinking, ambition, everything will fall. So India is bursting with talent. It is bursting with opportunity. But वो conversion होना है.
जी sir. Thank you, sir, for taking out time and covering all these various aspects. And I think जो आपने end में बात बोली है, mindset. I don't know, maybe as we have grown as an economy, we have become more ambitious, we are discussing this more, because even 10 years ago, as a civilian, मैं इतना military talks नहीं सुनता था.
We have fantastic lawyers like you, but a lot of your lawyerly mind must come into the national security space. We need good minds.
Yes, absolutely.
Of course, valor, courage and all, they are important. But हमारी thinking भी has to be forward looking and But my hunch tells me once again that that time has come. This is the time we are going to convert. थोड़ी मुश्किलें होंगी, but this was a very different India.
Hope so, sir. So you have seen India through all its phases. So hope so, sir. कि ये वाला phase leads to us not having conversations on why should we be a superpower, but conversations on why we aren't a superpower and what all to do to be that superpower.
If I may just add one thing, 15 years from now, somebody should be doing a podcast in California or in Berlin. कि देखो इंडिया ने ये कर दिया, जो हम चाइना की बात करते हैं ना, इंडिया ने ये कर दिया. I'm waiting for that day to become a reality. The Indians have done this and not we saying the Chinese
have done this. True, sir. Hope to see that, sir. Hope we live through that journey and see India doing it and setting the agenda for the world, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your time and for covering all these topics.
Thank you, Ishkaran. Thank you. By the way, I've been watching you for a while. I've seen many of your shows. So you're doing great work. Thank you. All the best.